My name is Lena Carter, and 3 weeks ago I sat in our company's largest conference room and watched my boss tell 40 people they were getting a 20% raise. Everyone except me. He smiled like he'd just handed out candy, then looked right at me with a tone so casual it felt cruel. Your performance doesn't quite align with leadership expectations, Lena. No one said a word, not even a sympathetic glance. I don't know if it was shock or the fact that Travis spoke with such authority, but the room went still. My heart didn't sink. It clenched, tight and sharp like it knew something inside me had finally snapped. I sat there perfectly still, hands folded over my lap like I wasn't unraveling on the inside. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd written most of the quarterly report that Travis was flipping through on the screen. The same report he had used to justify the raises. It had my data, my charts, my projections, my research. I'd spent weeks fine-tuning those numbers, running late-night simulations from my kitchen table while reheating takeout for the third night in a row. I thought of all the weekends I stayed late while the office emptied out. The times I canceled dinner with my parents just to take calls from our Canadian clients. I remembered every time Travis told me to be patient, that recognition came in time, that I should focus on delivering value and let the rest follow. So I did, for 3 years. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I gathered my notebook, said I understood, and walked out before the burn in my throat turned into something visible. The hallway back to my desk felt a mile long. Every step echoed, not from my heels, but from the weight of all the silent sacrifices that suddenly felt meaningless. What does it say about a place when your best work gets ignored because you don't shout loud enough, or when leadership sees silence as a lack of ambition instead of a sign of control? I'm not confrontational by nature. I'd rather solve a problem behind the scenes than make a speech in a boardroom. But that day, something changed in me. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My mother cleaned houses while studying for her GED. My father worked night shifts at a warehouse and still made it to every parent-teacher conference. They didn't raise me to demand praise, but they did teach me to know my worth. And quietly over the years, I'd started forgetting it. The truth is, I'd been warned. People had left this company before me. Talented people. People who didn't want to play the game. I stayed because I believed in the work. Because I thought merit still mattered. Because I told myself that being overlooked was temporary and eventually someone would notice. Travis noticed. Just not in the way I'd hoped. There was something he didn't know, though. Something no one in that room knew. While he was busy distributing raises and clipping names out of credit lines, I'd been nurturing a client relationship that was about to shift everything. The kind of shift that doesn't knock quietly, it slams the door open. So I didn't get a raise that day. What I got instead was clarity, and a phone call that would change not just my career, but the power structure of the entire company. If you've ever been told to wait your turn, if you've ever watched someone else get credit for your work, then stay with me. Because this story isn't just mine. It might be yours too. I was born in El Paso, Texas, to two people who had crossed a border with nothing but their grit and a hope that their daughter would have more. My dad never made it past 6th grade, but he could fix anything with a wrench and a flashlight. My mom cleaned offices by night and read English flashcards on her breaks. They taught me early that education was my way through. So I studied hard, kept quiet, and never gave anyone a reason to think I couldn't handle something. I got into UT Austin on a scholarship, majored in computer science, and graduated top of my class with a minor in business analytics. No one in my family knew what data engineering really meant, but they called every week to ask how it was going. 3 weeks after graduation, I started my job at Novametric, a software consulting firm in Austin. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. Mid-sized, lots of potential, and a place where people who delivered results supposedly got ahead. I kept my head down, learned fast, and raised my hand for every project no one else wanted. That's how I ended up on the Northridge Tech account. At the time, it was small. A Canadian client with niche infrastructure needs and a time zone that made 5 a.m. calls my new normal. No one wanted it, not with the logistics or the technical red tape. I took it anyway. I built relationships, slowly sending follow-ups that no one asked for and creating systems they didn't know they needed until they had them. Travis, our division head, was one of those leaders who always seemed to be just about to recognize someone. He had a loud voice, a strong jaw, and an uncanny ability to turn team efforts into solo victories. Over time, I noticed patterns. He'd reference success in vague terms, never naming who actually executed what. Ideas I sent in late-night briefs would show up in his decks under labels like strategic initiatives or division-wide pivots. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but then colleagues started leaving. Smart ones. Ones who'd been here longer than me. Some pulled me aside before they left and said things like, "Don't wait too long for permission." I didn't understand what they meant back then. I thought if I kept delivering, someone would eventually say something that mattered. What I didn't know yet was that being indispensable to a client isn't the same as being visible to your boss. And in a place like this, sometimes your silence doesn't just keep the peace, it buries you. Still, I stayed. Not because I liked the system, but because I believed I could outwork it. Maybe I still do. When the meeting ended, no one looked at me. They kept their heads down, fiddling with papers or pretending to type. I walked out slowly, careful not to let my face crack, not to let the heat rising in my chest turn into something loud. The hallway felt colder than it should have been. Maybe it was just the contrast between how much I had given and how little that room gave back. At my desk, I sat without touching the keyboard. I didn't want to move, not yet. I just needed a moment to remind myself who I was outside of Travis's opinion. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, half expecting another internal ping or a calendar reminder, but it wasn't from anyone inside the company. It was a message from Aiden Frosts, the CEO of Northridge Tech. Just finished with our board. We're greenlit to move forward with the 10M expansion. Let's talk tomorrow about the announcement plan. I stared at the screen. Not in disbelief, but in something quieter, like recognition. Like the universe finally nodding in my direction after years of looking the other way. It wasn't just the size of the contract. It was that they trusted me. They saw me. And they were about to make my work the center of a deal that would double our division's revenue overnight. Travis didn't know. No one on the executive team did. I hadn't mentioned it yet, not until the terms were solid. I wasn't trying to hide it. I was just used to being overlooked. I looked up from my screen, my reflection caught faintly in the monitor. The same tired eyes, the same calm breath. But inside, something was different. Not anger, not revenge, something clearer. A sharp sense of timing. The understanding that maybe for once I didn't have to ask for recognition. Maybe I could just let the facts speak louder than any speech I could ever give. The company had a quarterly meeting scheduled for the next day. Travis would be presenting our progress. I had a feeling he'd want to mention Northridge, maybe even take credit for the early discussions I'd initiated months ago. I didn't plan to stop him, not directly, but I knew one thing. At 10:30 a.m., right in the middle of his presentation, my phone would ring. And this time, I wouldn't answer it in private. I'd answer it where everyone could hear. I got to the office before anyone else. It wasn't unusual for me to arrive early, but that morning felt different. Not nervous, not angry. Just clear. I poured myself coffee from the break room, sat at my desk for a moment, and watched the quiet. The calm before a very calculated storm. Chloe spotted me as I walked past reception. She was already in, as always, with her thermos beside her and reading glasses perched halfway down her nose. She'd been at Novometric longer than anyone still standing, and in a way, she knew the company's undercurrents better than the execs did. She didn't say hello. She just looked at me over the rim of her cup like she already knew everything. "Rough meeting yesterday." Her voice was casual, but there was a sharpness underneath it. I gave a half smile and shrugged. She nodded like she expected that, then reached into her drawer and pulled out a printed packet. "Travis's presentation for today," she said. "I proofread it last night. Figured you'd want to look." I took it from her. The slide deck was familiar. I'd built most of the content myself 3 weeks ago when we were prepping for the Northridge proposal. But something caught my eye almost immediately. Every mention of my name was gone. The charts I'd created were labeled Strategic Team Insights. Key projections were credited to the executive office. Not even a thank you footnote. Chloe watched my face as I flipped through. He's planning to frame Northage as his personal initiative, she said, then sipped her coffee. I didn't speak. There was no point. We both knew what this was. I closed the folder slowly and looked at her. He's starting with this first 20 minutes, she said. You'll know when the slide with the Canadian flag hits. I nodded and handed the packet back. Chloe hesitated. You're not going to say anything, are you? Not in the way he expects, I said. That made her smile just slightly. She tilted her head. The conference room speaker system's been spotty lately, she said. Might want to double-check it before the meeting. Wouldn't want a technical hiccup when something important comes through. I walked down to the conference room and tested the sound. The projector flickered to life. The speakers buzzed faintly, then cleared. I called my own phone to check the clarity. Crystal. I placed it right in the center of the table. Visible, deliberate quiet. By the time people began arriving, I had already taken my seat along the wall, not at the table. The same spot I always took. Not because I was invisible, because I wanted to watch. Travis walked in 5 minutes before the hour, clipboard and handsuit, perfectly pressed. He nodded to the tech guy, whispered something to his deputy, and then looked straight past me, but I didn't look away. I was ready, not with words or slides or counter-arguments, with timing, with truth, with a phone call that wasn't just about numbers, but about who really built the bridge they were all about to walk across. He just didn't know yet. The meeting started right on time. Travis stood at the head of the room, tie-tight, voice-loud posture, perfect. He began with a round of generic praise. Team effort, impressive growth, bright future. Then, with a practice pause, he clicked to a slide showing the Northage Tech logo next to ours. That's when the energy shifted. Now he said, here's where things get exciting. He launched into a speech about strategic alignment and cross-border expansion. His tone changed. It was the sound of someone basking in a spotlight they didn't earn. He spoke about patience negotiation and leadership vision. He used phrases I'd written in status updates, only now they were his. I felt the familiar sting, but it passed quickly, because I knew what came next. At exactly 10:30, my phone lit up. I watched his eyes flicker toward it, then back to his slides. I raised my hand slightly. Sorry to interrupt, I said calmly. That's Aiden Frosts from Northage calling. Should I step out or let him know you're presenting? The room went silent. Travis froze mid-sentence. He looked at me like I'd spoken in another language. We're in the middle of something, he said. Voice tighter now. I nodded. I can message him that you're unavailable to discuss the expansion today. That word hung in the air. Expansion. Everyone knew what it meant, but no one moved. Travis hesitated, then forced a tight smile. Take it briefly, he said. I answered, put the phone on speaker, and leaned back. Good morning, Aiden. You're on with our full team right now. Perfect, he said. I was calling with news, and it's great that everyone can hear this directly. We've finalized the expansion terms. The board approved it this morning. The contract will increase from $3 million to $10 million annually. There was a small gasp from someone near the window. Aiden continued smooth and clear. This is largely thanks to Lena's outstanding guidance and insight. Her understanding of our systems and long-term needs has been unmatched. We've also made a separate decision. Our board would like to offer her the position of Director of Global Integration based out of our Toronto office starting next quarter. I kept my eyes forward. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Before I could respond, Aiden added one more thing. Oh, and since I've got everyone here, I want to clarify something else. Northage has entered the final stages of acquiring Novometric. We expect to close the deal by next month. As part of that process, we'll be reviewing internal leadership structures and evaluating alignment with our values. Travis blinked slowly. No sound came from him. None came from anyone. I glanced around the room. Faces were frozen, mouths half open. Aiden signed off politely and ended the call. I set the phone down gently and folded my hands in my lap. Travis stared at the projector like it might save him. He cleared his throat and mumbled something about taking a short break. Then he walked out without looking back. People whispered, but no one moved. I sat quietly, not smug, not shaken, just still, because it wasn't revenge. It was reality catching up, and I didn't need to say a word. The boardroom was brighter than usual. Maybe it was the mid-morning light, or maybe it was the shift in power hanging silently in the air. Chairs were filled, coffee was poured, and the Northridge delegation had taken their place across the video monitors with the calm of people who already knew how this would go. Travis stood at the front, clutching a folder like it could still anchor him. He opened with a controlled smile, thanked everyone for coming, and launched into a speech about legacy growth and transition. He framed the acquisition as a validation of leadership, a move that aligned perfectly with his strategic goals. It was smooth, it was confident, and it was exactly what he thought they needed to hear. When he finished, the chair of the board thanked him and turned to Aiden, who offered a few brief words of appreciation. Then she looked at me. Lena, we'd like to hear your analysis before finalizing any decisions. I stood, slowly connected my laptop to the screen, and pulled up my presentation. No fanfare, just facts. The first slide showed 3 years of project data. Each initiative was color-coded by the lead contributor. I pointed to a pattern that emerged early. Our highest-performing projects consistently came from collaborative teams with shared ownership, not from directives passed down from the executive suite. The numbers spoke clearly. Where shared credit existed, so did innovation. I moved to the next set of slides. These showed side-by-side comparisons of internal reports and public-facing decks. In several cases, original authorship had been stripped out, names removed, credit consolidated under vague titles. In one instance, a slide developed by our senior analyst, Jacob, had been relabeled as Executive Insights. I didn't have to say whose fingerprints had made that change. Travis shifted in his seat. I noticed, but I didn't slow down. The final slides were the track changes Chloe had provided. Metadata showed that Travis himself had edited the files. Comments left behind made it clear. Phrases like remove name, consolidate under leadership voice, and reframe as division success appeared more than once. I let the silence stretch after that last one. The chair looked over her glasses. Thank you, Lena. Travis, would you like to respond? He stood, tugged once at his jacket, and started talking about cohesion and branding, about the importance of presenting a unified message to external stakeholders. He said leadership often required difficult choices about visibility and focus. But his voice had changed. It wasn't calm anymore. It was defensive. One of the board members interrupted. Did those difficult choices include removing direct contributor recognition across multiple projects? Travis tried to pivot, claimed it was about strategy, not erasure. But the damage had been done. His words were being heard differently now. Aiden leaned into the camera slightly. At Northridge, we believe performance must be visible to thrive. We've reviewed Lena's report in detail. Our goal is not just integration. It's alignment with people who create value and elevate others in the process. The chair nodded. A motion was proposed. A vote was taken. In less than 5 minutes, Travis was formally relieved of his role as CEO. He would remain in an advisory capacity through the end of the quarter. I didn't look at him when it was announced. I didn't need to. That part of the story was over. Then the chair turned to me. Lena, we'd like you to step in as interim director of strategy while we assess structural realignments. Are you willing? I answered without hesitation. Yes. As the meeting adjourned, I gathered my things quietly. People congratulated me, but I kept my replies short. I didn't feel victorious. I felt responsible for making sure what came next actually lived up to what people had deserved all along. Walking back to my desk, I passed Travis's office. His door was closed, blinds drawn. I paused just briefly, then kept going. The path forward was clear, and it no longer ran through him. 3 months later, the office felt like a different place. People smiled in the hallways again. The kind of quiet that used to hang in the air, the one filled with fear, not focus, was gone. There was laughter during lunch breaks, and open doors where closed ones used to send messages. Teams met without waiting for permission. Ideas flowed faster, not louder, because people finally felt heard. I had been offered the corner office that Travis once ruled from. I declined. Instead, I moved my desk into the open workspace right next to the product team. It surprised a few people at first, but soon, no one thought twice about it. When your leadership is rooted in presence, not position, the walls don't matter. Jacob now leads analytics with full recognition for his work. Chloe joined the onboarding committee to make sure new hires understand that their voice matters from day one. Even our interns present directly to leadership now. No filters, no spin. Some days are still tough. Deadlines pile up, tensions run high. But the difference is in how we move through them together. With respect, with clarity, with space for credit to land where it belongs. One Friday afternoon, just before closing my laptop, an email came through. It was from Aiden, a simple message with our updated client retention numbers, the highest in company history. At the bottom, he added a short note. This is what happens when people are allowed to own their brilliance. I read it twice before hitting forward. Then I typed just one line above it. This belongs to all of us. That moment, more than any title or announcement, is what stayed with me. Not because it proved anything to the outside world, but it felt like coming full circle. I didn't get here by fighting for power. I got here by refusing to stay invisible, and by trusting that sometimes the most lasting influence comes not from being seen, but from helping others be seen. Leadership isn't a spotlight. It's a mirror that reflects the strength around you. And if you're lucky, you'll get to hold that mirror steady long enough for others to see what's been there all along. We're still building, still learning, still stumbling some days. But the direction feels right, and for the first time in a long time, it feels like everyone is walking forward together. Not behind someone, not beneath someone, together. Because real leadership isn't about holding the floor, it's about making space, and when you do it right, you don't need to take credit. You just need to let them shine.